Hi guys, my name is James Charles and I am the newest CoverGirl. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do this dark glam skull makeup, which is perfect for Halloween. Of course, me being me, I decided to go super dark and dramatic with this look. I absolutely love how it turned out. It is totally customizable, however, you can make it as dark or as simple as you'd like. If you want to see how I created this look, make sure you keep on watching. Hi guys, so to start off this spooky skeleton makeup, I'm first going to go in with my face primer for Combo Skin. I'm using my hands to rub this all over to make sure we have a nice, even, and flat base. I'm then going to jump right in with my damp beauty sponge and my clean matte foundation and just rub this all over and pounce it in. This foundation is pretty medium coverage, but this makeup look definitely is going to be full coverage, so I'm making sure to pack a lot of this on. To highlight and conceal my face today, I'm going to go in with my CoverGirl plus Olay Deep Puffing Concealer and just put this in all the high points of my face. So that'll be under the eyes, in the center of the forehead, underneath the cheekbones, and in the center of the chin, just to brighten everything up. And then I'm just going to blend that all out with my damp beauty sponge once again. Then, to finish off the base, I'm going to set my entire face using my Clean Matte Pressed Powder. To start off my brows today, I'm going in with my Brow and Eye Maker's pencil from CoverGirl. I began by outlining the outer edge of the tail and then dragging that pencil in to outline the bottom edge of the brow. Once I know how thick I want it to be, I'm going back into the tail and just defining it a little bit more, making sure that point is nice and on fleek, and then using just the excess to fill in the rest of the brow. Once I have the basic shape, I'm going back into that deep puffing concealer on a flat top brush just to conceal and clean up the bottom edge of the brow. So I'm also going to use that same concealer to serve as an eye primer and then just blending it out with a big fluffy brush and then setting it with powder. To begin this eyeshadow look, I'm first going to go in with Cinnamon Toast Bronzer from CoverGirl on a big fluffy brush. I am going to use an eyeshadow palette later on, but I really want the outer edge and the transition colors to be very, very warm tone, so I thought this bronzer would work perfectly. I'm just going in with my crease, doing windshield wiper motions, and then also going in on the lower lash line and kind of dragging that shadow out towards my temples. To add some more dimension to this eye look, I'm going into my True Naked Nudes palette. I'm going to use that middle brown shade on a fluffy packing brush and start to fill in my eyelid, using windshield wiper motions and circular motions to blend it up into the crease. Once I get to the outer corner, I'm going to go in on the lower lash line and then kind of drag that shadow out in a V shape because we want this eye to be really elongated and blown out. To ensure that everything is blended, I'm going back in with Cinnamon Toast on the same fluffy brush from before to just go over those edges. Next, I'm going to go back in with that fluffy packing brush, but this time I'm going to use the darkest brown shade in the Naked Nudes palette, and I'm going to start by defining the lid. I'm really focusing this color near the lash line and blending it upwards, making sure not to go too far, and then once again, once I get to the outer corner, I'm just blending that shadow outwards in a V shape. To darken and define my eyes a little bit more, I'm going into my Perfect Point Plus eyeliner in both the upper and lower waterline in the shade Charcoal. I'm then just going to use a small definer brush and the same dark brown shadow from before to blend that out to make sure there is no skin showing around my eye. To make the skull glow and slay for the gods, I'm just going to use my favorite gold highlighter on a flat defining brush on both the brow bone and the inner corner for a nice pop of light. After curling my lashes, I'm going into the new So Lashy mascara to elongate and thicken my lashes, and then I'm just going to quickly pop on my favorite pair of dramatic falsies to finish off this eye look. And that is one eye completed. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one off camera, then we can go ahead and get started with the rest of the face. Okay, so let's be real, skeletons are like cheekbone goals. So I'm going into my Cinnamon Toast Bronzer on my favorite contouring brush to carve out my cheekbones, forehead, and jawline to make them nice, sharp, and defined. Next, I'm just cleaning up my contour using my Clean Matte Powder to really give those cheekbones a sunken-in appearance. Of course, we have to be glowing on all areas of the face, not just the eyes, so I'm going back into my favorite gold highlighter from before and just putting that on the tops of my cheekbones. To really turn this into a skull, I'm going back in with the same charcoal liner from before and starting to sketch out my nose. I start by putting a dot in the center and then drawing a V shape and then just connecting the tips of the V's down and wrapping them underneath my nostrils. Then, to make the nose look real and actually hollow, I'm going back into the dark brown shade from the Nudes palette on the packer brush and just filling it in. I also went in with a small definer brush to make sure all the lines were nice and sharp. To start off my decaying, bony mouth, I'm first going into the white face paint and just giving a light wash of color around the lips and mouth, making sure to set it later on with the white powder so there's no creasing or transfer. To start sketching out the teeth, I first started off with my charcoal liner from CoverGirl, but I ended up later on switching to the Intensify Me liquid liner, obviously both in the shade black. I began by drawing vertical lines on my lips to represent the teeth, and then I also drew lines extending from the corners of my mouth outwards and up to kind of create a creepy smile. Once I had all my teeth in place, I went back in with that small definer brush and the dark brown shade from the Nudes palette and kind of started shading over the teeth to add more dimensions and shadows. Once I had all the teeth outlined, I used the excess shadow on the brush to draw lines up and down from the corners of the teeth. Almost like a picket fence type of shape, this really makes it look like the teeth are growing into my face. I then went back in with the iconic Cinnamon Toast Bronzer and Fluffy brush just to go over those shaded edges to make sure everything is nice and blended together and there are no super harsh lines. As an optional last step to really give the skull some attitude, I'm going back in with the medium tone brown shade from the Nudes palette on a fluffy brush and putting some color right above the inner corner of the brows. To finish off this look, I'm going back in with that packer brush and the dark brown one last time and just deepening that shadow a tiny little bit, and we are done. Alright guys, and that is the completed dark glam skeleton makeup perfect for this coming up Halloween. As I said before, I decided to go super intense, and you guys know me, I love dramatic makeup looks, but you can totally customize this to be however dramatic or light as you want. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up down below and subscribe to CoverGirl if you have not already for more amazing content coming soon. If you'd like to follow me on my makeup journey and see all my crazy out-of-the-box looks, as well as see what life is like being a CoverGirl, make sure to follow me on all my social media accounts. The links will be below, or just search James Charles. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Boom!